And so these were all crops. He was kind of experimenting with the tomatoes, but he knew that it had enough moisture in there because we have no irrigation. So he was very knowledgeable of what crops could really grow in that area. It does, and now if you can see, the farm is actually physically in Massachusetts, but the dirt road, very long dirt road to get there, is all in Rhode Island, and I think the official address is Warren, Rhode Island. And so the cost of having it out there, when there's lots of crop that can grow because there is, enough moisture, and we had actually a very successful year. So, well, I'm going to get to that. So one of the things was Dr. McCoy had a goal that he wanted the food not to go too far. So we're at letter A, that's where the farm is. And if you can believe this, within 6.5 miles, there's actually 5 different food pantries that we could service. And so I contacted them, introduced myself, and said, hey, I'm the new coordinator for McCoy Farm. We want to supply food to you. Are you interested in the program? 4 of them responded, was really excited. I didn't get a response from the last one. So we actually service 2 in Bristol, Bristol Good Neighbors and East Bay Food Pantry. Then we have one that is the SVDP that's in Warren, Rhode Island, basically down the street. And then we have in Barrington is called Tappan. So we got them involved. And so fortunately, my first volunteer was this girl, Amber, really eager to go, younger than me, which was great. And she worked night shifts, I worked day shifts, but we were able, because of being a consultant, I had some flexibility. So her and I had met. We actually went down to the 2 of the food pantries in Bristol before she had to go to work. And it was an eye-opener because what's so important is you've got to know who your customers are, what their needs are and how you can work with them, because we needed to tap into their volunteers, because the aspect of my responsibilities, well, let me just step back. The farmer's responsibility was to clear the land and plant the crop. So he started his seedlings, and then he put them in the ground at the end of March. And my responsibility was to do the weeding, obviously get some volunteers, the weeding, harvesting, and also the distribution. So she was a great help for me. We went around, and one of the challenges with the food pantries is they're not open always the same time because they're servicing different people. And so it was like, we can't harvest every day only because we don't have enough people, or we didn't have anybody other than her and myself. And so so we needed to decide what was the best day. And so Wednesdays, most of the food pantries were open. And so we had set up, like at 9 o'clock in the morning, they would pick up their produce. And Tuesday night, so because Amber worked during the nights, she was there to help the distribution section of it. And then Tuesday nights, I would be getting a group of volunteers together to harvest. And so they got their produce within less than 24 hours, which not many of us have that opportunity. Even when we go to the grocery store, those produce are old. So I thought we were providing a great service. And then on Sunday mornings, we also picked, and then I'll show you, we have a shed. We also had another place to store, especially in the heat of the summer. Even overnight, it was too hot to store the produce there. So we, right. So I guess I'll just end it at that.
That's important too, if you're designing snake pen farm, how you keep your products fresh.
Right, and then on Sundays, none of the food pantries are, well, actually one food pantry in the town that I live in Smithfield, was open, so there was an opportunity for me to deliver to them. So we did, in some aspects, go outside of that, because there was sometimes we had a lot of food that, we were oversaturating. I live in Greenville, and so I'm about a half an hour away from the farm. So, of course, Amber and myself, now we were tasked to find volunteers, get in touch with our friends, and then the food bank advertised for us. And so slowly the volunteers came, but these are key people, because Dr. McCoy is the owner, Chris in the back is the farmer, and then this is my husband, who was basically the third, major volunteer, which has been a great thing for me. And what happened was, this particular woman, Jan Martin, she is also a farm coordinator and in Warren, but unfortunately, last year's weather was really a struggle, and we had first a lot of rain in the spring. So we actually started planting in the end of May, but we had to do a replant on some of the crop because some got washed away. And fortunately, the farmers still had some seedlings to put. But there are two other farms in our area, in the East Bay area. One is in Bristol, and one is in Warren, only about like a mile and a half from us. They're food bank farms, and they had a disastrous year. They were encountered by lots of deer, other animals, the rain. They just didn't get the growth. So, I think because we had the professional farmer help us, the soil hadn't been used in a long time, so there, it didn't have to worry about the rock rotation, and I think beginner's luck is where we were. So, so this is the plot of land, and as you can see, the farmer had put up the deer fencing, and what you do, and this is all something I learned in the process, is you have like these little foil packets of peanut butter. And so this is an electrified fence, and it's used by a solar panel. You can see in the corner here. And so if the curious deer come up to the smelly peanut butter, and they get their nose zapped. And so it doesn't kill them, but it's enough they're like, well, I can go somewhere else, because there was only scattered fenced areas, because where we are, there's lots of different farms, and then there's a horse farm, and then Chris he's been growing squash. I don't know what other crop he's been growing prior. And then there's another farmer who has like a lot of different corn, and then when you first approach off the main road, there's a farm that has a variety of different vegetables. So the deer, had no interest in us, so we were very fortunate. They didn't, bother us. We didn't have any animal issues. As you can see, because we were thinking about the volunteers, and you don't want to step on the areas that you have the crop, we did every other row, and so this was just left, and then so we had 3 rows of crop, and then they also used this weed block, which was biodegradable, and it was made of cornstarch. So we didn't, we weren't hurting the environment. I don't know, and I don't really want to know what they used to initially put the crop on for the fertilizer and everything, but we didn't use any pesticides throughout the growing season. We didn't have any irrigation, as I said, and so it was Mother Nature at its best for us. What was interesting is I was like heartbroken when all of a sudden one day we went to the farm and the kale was eaten by some kind of a bug. And I was like, oh, and it was the saddest looking plant. I mean, we had, I forget exactly how many plants, but there was quite a few. But the interesting thing is the plant must have got some defense mechanism in it. Because like I said, we did nothing other than, we picked off a couple of worms or whatever they were that we saw. And then all of a sudden, it blossomed again. And we had an incredible yield throughout the rest of the season. And one of the reasons why I wanted kale is because it can grow till winter and beyond, depending on how mild of a winter. So that actually kept us picking until the middle of October. And I would have loved to have gone more, but as I heard in the earlier presentation, you have to stop at some point so that the farmer can plow under and do the cover crop. And so I was always a little bit concerned that maybe I went a little bit too long. But we got, that final yield, which was really exciting. We did not have any problems with that. At my home garden, we did. But you can actually adjust these. There's like a little plastic pin so you can lower it. So, but I'm not. No, this is just two wires, strings. But I'm sure that you could probably put more. Some people might do a little mesh inside. We're trying to figure out what we want to do for our home garden because we have woodchucks and they, had a field day at our home.